It is a big idea, a new world order.
Your world is not what it seems. Ansary, Outside the Box.
Welcome to the 100th edition of Outside the Box. I'm your host, Ansary. Welcome. We come to you live from Portland, Oregon, May 3rd, 2007, and we're going to be here live for the next 2 hours, all the way up until 8 p.m. tonight in observance of the 100th edition of Outside the Box, and we would like to thank Metro East for that extra hour between 6 and 7. Tonight, we're going to try and get to your phone calls on the issues that you, as a Portlander, are concerned about, not only in terms of the New World Order, but in terms of what you are doing or what you would like to do to be a part of the solution this summer. As the weather gets nicer, as we can now get outside, we don't have the excuse of dealing with the rain, and learn what does it really mean to be sustainable right here in the Northwest and get out of the escapist mindset of having to leave our homeland here as we face this crisis. And my friends, if you're concerned about the New World Order, if you're concerned about centralizing power right now on planet Earth, you cannot adequately have a conversation about these issues without talking about food. Most especially organic food, such as this apple that was grown locally in Gresham. How often do we eat food? Do we ingest things without knowing what's in the food? And right now, there's a crisis in this nation. The tainted feed that you have heard about that has entered the food industry in terms of pet food has now moved on to human consumption, now that we now know that chickens have been eating tainted feed, and humans so far have not gotten sick from it, but there is an investigation that the FDA is a part of at this time. The problem with the FDA is that I've also called for an investigation of the FDA themselves based on the fact that they've approved human consumption of cloned meat and other things that we've seen the FDA pass as well. Okaying a private corporation to mix a human gene with a rice gene to produce more rice. Now that agriculture has turned into big agribusiness, we are about to see a new wave of disease and possible food shortages in the next couple of years. As sad as that seems, we have to be prepared and, of course, focus on the real issues in a world where we are literally surrounded with distractions that don't stop with Britney Spears or Anna Nicole Smith. We live in a world where apparently the amount of times a ball goes through a hoop has relevance still to this day to Americans on how they feel, happy or sad. In a world where genocide is as common as sneezing, what's wrong with this picture? How disconnected have we become to not only in ourselves, but to the natural environment and world around us? We are going to show a large number of clips tonight, and in between, get to your phone calls. The first clip that you're about to see now goes back to the year 2005 when I was just getting started here at Access TV. Now, I initially started taking the classes back in 2004, and I was startled already about the world I live in at a very young age. That's where this began. I've always been a contrarian of sorts, questioning the norm, questioning different layers or aspects of what is called the Matrix. And throughout my life, I've always wondered, why do humans behave this way? Well, why do humans behave this way? Are we really living the way that we were meant to live? Now, throughout my life, I came up with the conclusion that many also that watch this program also share, and that life and everything that you experience within life is never an accident. There's never a coincidence, and everything, and I happen to believe this, happens for a reason, a very good reason. And sometimes those lessons come in ways that we, at the moment, don't see them as lessons. things, hurdles, obstacles that actually improve who we are as human beings and as researchers also, by the way, on a side note, but we're trying to get beyond political now. We experience things in our life, and it's a matter of how we look at them, our perspective, that dictates how we can come out of that situation. And throughout my life, I've always questioned the status quo, because the status quo, from the behavior I saw of my peers in elementary school, middle school, high school, and even college, my friends, it is frightening to define the word normal. What is normal? What is abnormal? And in a world of moral relativity, really, we don't know anything about what's right and what's wrong, because we have been misled so long, not only by the mother government, of course, and what you would call the Illuminati or the central power structures, but we have done it to ourselves, because the conspiracy theory ends, my friends, when we begin to partake of the conspiracy against ourselves. When we know the information, we know what the truth is, and we, A, not do anything about it, but B, we don't believe we can do anything about it, and we continue to support the system even when we know it's wrong, because we're convinced that we can't do anything about it. This is a spiritual fight, and this is larger than anything that you are going to see in the physical realm. And most of it I can't explain, because most of it is just information that I, Alex Ansary, can understand, but can't prove with facts to you on this program, which is a newscast. So you, my friends, have to pick up the slack in your own life and figure out what the answers to the unanswered questions in your own life truly are. And I am someone that can't do that for you as an individual. Regardless, the testimony of many men that come before me are still on the public record, on not only the World Wide Web, but on Access TV, community radio, and other places like that, where information such as the information that you're about to see is still readily available. The question is anyone collectively going to do anything about it? In the next few years, we're going to find out if that actually happens or not. So here's the first clip from the year 2005. I basically got my feet wet starting a few different things. And for some reason, on my 100th show, there is a fire drill going on at this moment. So we don't know exactly if we're going to continue on with the rest of the broadcast or not. But what's that? We're going to roll the clip, and we'll be right back. And we got a fire drill on the side. We'll be right back. We were able to see over the past few decades an escalation in police brutality, control, surveillance, cameras, and now biometrics and national ID cards. And it is still raising the bar even more till we're not aware of it. But they amplify it to an extreme extent to where we get so bombarded with the information, and they tell it to us so many times that it appears to be true.
In this day and age, we can't speak out our mind, and if we are, we get thrown off the air like Dan Rather. But, yeah, we really appreciate what you guys are doing, and, it really sucks that only on, these cable access shows we get to hear the true opinion of people, be it Democrat, be it not. We get to hear the true opinion of what you guys think.
I met Alex coming to Ground Zero Lounge. I've been doing my radio show now in Portland for 5 years. And, and my radio show deals with this very subject. And I'm on a commercial radio station. I'm not on some independent. I'm independent on a commercial radio station. But Alex decided, hey, he wasn't going to blame the media anymore. He was going to become the media. And if you have something to say, you can take the classes and do it too.
Put aside your politics. That's not what the show's about. Democrat, Republican. It's all the same when you get to the root of it. Left, right, whatever. Commie, socialist, democratic. These political systems are just designed by them to throw you off and keep you distracted. Remember, we're human beings first. They are really focused on being real concerned about what we talk about and what we're thinking about and what we're feeling in our heads. But what we have forgotten is what they're thinking, what they believe, and what gods they worship. Bottom line, it's 2005. We've had 9/11. We've had the London bombings. We had the bombings in Madrid. What's next? Now we're dealing with Hurricane Katrina. Now, throughout this process, for those of you that are just now beginning to research central government structures, the New World Order, or what happened on 9/11, or the police state, or what's happening with Monsanto, these things aren't separate issues, they're all interrelated. And when I started this program, I learned a lot more since what I thought I knew about the world at that time. And some things you can fight to a degree, some things you cannot fight. We all come and knock upon the door of knowledge of the universe, how things work on our own free will and volition. That's something that you can't fight. That's something that you cannot force. So when I began to take that leap and jump outside the norm of who I thought I was, who people thought I was, who the world thought I was, and do something different because I was passionate about it, even though I got weird looks. When I began to speak about these issues, looking for people to help me out, be a part of what I was doing, there wasn't anybody there. But what was good was that I learned how to do it by myself on my own without anyone's help, without anyone's support. And I learned to forget about what people think about me. And to some degree, I still care what people think about me. And part of that is good because I want to be competitive and bring you each week the very best newscast. But a very large part of that is really, metaphorically, living in your self-imposed, your very own self-imposed prison without bars. Always wondering, how can I fit in? How can I be that peg that slips neatly and evenly into the hole so there's no friction, there's no conflict? So I stuck my arm out to a lot of different people that willingly came on the program, and one of the very first guests that I had was Michael Rupert. In this next clip, we shot this interview actually right here in this spot in the studio when he came to town to speak for the 9/11 group right here in Portland in the summer of 2005. And Mike Rupert, my friends, before he began to talk about 9/11, he actually gave a presentation about 9/11 and the money ties between Wall Street and the ISI and Al-Qaeda at Portland State University, actually 2 times in late 2001. In fact, the director back there was actually there filming that on that day. And so that was actually one of the earliest videotapes that I looked at, Truth and Lies of 9/11 by Michael Rupert. And he brought forth a lot of important points pertaining to war games and some of the things that were happening on the day of 9/11 and the financial transactions such as insider trading that were happening as well. We'll be right back, and with that, we will also take your phone calls after this clip. We'll be right back.
It's interesting that groups like the Bilderbergers and the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, a lot of their members have come up in the last 6 months with a new term that I'd never heard before called demand destruction. And one of the ways to mitigate, as demand is rising exponentially, China's economy is growing at 8% a year, is you destroy demand. How do you destroy demand? You create a recession.
Right.
This country, with 5% of the world's population, uses 25% of the world's oil. So if you destroy demand, the fact is that people who are out of work, bankrupt, broke, whose homes have been foreclosed, the housing bubble's going this year, the markets are going this year, so that people who are out of work and broke don't buy gasoline, don't go on long trips. You destroy demand that way. Money, we now live in, basically it's disaster economy, but with an economic paradigm based on fractional reserve banking, debt-based growth, and fiat currency. It's essentially a pyramid scheme that has to keep growing, but it's more profitable to kill things, to destroy, to lock people up than it is to create a stable, happy, free living environment. There's more money to be made that way. So it's not so much the who for me as the what, it's the system. There are a lot of people who should be put in jail. First of all, the housing bubble is going to collapse enormously. The trade deficit with China is now out of control. The US dollar, the world is now rebelling against US imperial bullying around the world. We see major alliances forming, one in particular, BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, and China forming against the US. Hugo Chavez, the 4th largest oil supplier to this country, is uniting Latin America. China will eventually float its currency, the yuan. The dollar is in dire straits, and that's being propped up. So the dollar may lose value. China floats the yuan. Anything you buy at Walmart from China now is going to go up 40%. This country is so deeply in debt, the foreclosure rates are going to go through the roof. The housing bubble is going to pop very, very quickly, and they've just rewritten the bankruptcy laws. And if you look at the new bankruptcy bill, And some people talk about the Patriot Act. There's Patriot 1 and like a Patriot 1.2, and they didn't put it all in one. The Homeland Security bill was equally frightening. There's some medical bioterror legislation which has been equally draconian, but the latest bankruptcy bill is part of a package that's, to me, it's utterly fascistic in that you won't be able to discharge your debt anymore in bankruptcy. Corporations will literally tell you how much money you get to live on and where you get to work if you try to file bankruptcy.
Now, you said earlier that the euro pretty much is kicking the dollar's butt. Why is that?
Well, several reasons. First of all, it's partially gold-backed, and I am a big fan of gold. Owning physical gold is a store of wealth. But secondly, Europe has its house more together, but America is so deeply in debt, the United States in particular. Debt levels have never been higher anywhere in this country's history. Even 1928-29 pale in comparison to the debt level. There's no savings in this country. We're oversaturated with consumer goods.
And at the moment, we are in debt, $8.3 trillion, with a very large, increasingly trade deficit with China at the moment. So the whole situation also with the FDA and the food recall, right now, the FDA is engaged in damage control, because what our government, at the very least, does not want to do is damage trade relations with China at this point, because we have become so interdependent upon China for ingredients, for food. I mean, we get a lot of food from in the United States, but we're importing things that we don't need to import from China, all because of the cost of it. And of course, with the globalized economy, with everything interconnected in that manner, not localized but globalized, if something happens to the oil supply, which we're starting to see right now with it being about $3.41 on average here in Oregon, being a record high. We've actually had a record high a couple times this week. It just increases, and no one stops it. No one is held accountable. We know what happens next, and I'm telling you to get ready for very high food costs. Like I said last week, in today's world, this is not just about the New World Order. It's how they are involved in your food system and our general awareness of what is in the food itself. Remember, food, water, shelter, and air as well. Those are all important. Actually, in order of importance, it goes air, water, food, then shelter, which is arbitrary depending on where you are. And with the situation that we're dealing with the bees, there are about 5, 6, 7 different possible reasons for why the bees are dying off. The bees are responsible for pollination. 90% of your food, excluding bread and water, which we may be left with after all of this is done, if they in fact are dying off. They pollinate, then from there comes the plants. And when the plants die off, the animals die off. When the animals die off, the humans die off. We are entering a new era of time right now in the year 2007, and the most important thing you can do for yourself is to be a part of the solution and figure out how you can implement that in your own life. And with that, we're going to go to the first phone call of the evening. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, my name is Mo. And
hey, Mo.
Thank you very much indeed for your beautiful shows. And we sincerely, from the bottom of our hearts, we do appreciate you for whatever you're doing for our Portlandian in the United States.
Well, thanks, Mo, and I appreciate you calling into the radio show, too, that I do on Saturdays.
Yes, you're very welcome, sir. And a few issues I want to talk about. The first issue is very important, is about North American Union. I mean, right today, MSNBC, they had the debate about presidential debates, and they put www.politico.com. They put O on it, so it's become like already it's North American Union. Why they put O? It become like a Latin or become like a Spanish, because they want to accommodate the, the Mexican side too. That's why it's put politico.com, and they say go over there and put your questions for the presidential debate. And my second is that Amero is the new money of United States, and Mexico and Canada is coming. I mean, it's a matter of the time, within a year, 6 months, maybe, but very soon. The dollar is going to go down as the housing bubble, as we see, that many, many, many people are losing their houses and they have no place to stay. And all this is going to affect every one of us, whether we like it, whether we don't like it. And, you know, our money is not going to worth nothing. And Amero is going to be, $4 is going to be equal to $1. So each dollar you have is equal to 0.25 Amero.
Absolutely. We are being engineered socially to work harder for less. And that's a part of this system here. I mean, people think that, well, if we go to the Amero, and a lot of people are being conned right now in the Wall Street Journal, let's just go to the Amero. It's inevitable. The euro's kicking the dollar's butt. It's the next best thing since sliced bread. And what they don't really realize is the corporate interests involved in the North American Union. They believe that maybe it'll bring benefit to the farmers or something ridiculous like that. They have no idea, but they will at some point very soon, Mo, I guarantee it.
Exactly. And thank you very much, and happy birthday to your 100th show in Portland, Oregon.
Thank you.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And we're going to go to the next clip in just a minute, but on a quick note about Rupert, I did want to mention something about Michael Rupert. Michael Rupert has been through a lot in his life. He has been shot at for bringing forth information about the CIA importing powder cocaine into South Central Los Angeles. This is public. He has documents. He's been fighting the CIA for years. He disappeared for a long period of time, found himself in a way that I had to do myself. We go through a period in our lives where we don't know who we are. Michael Rupert also has a similar story of disappearing from the spotlight for a while, then coming forth in the 1990s with this documentation. Once 9/11 happened, he already understood about the CIA's relationship to Wall Street because he had been investigating money laundering of the drug money for years. And the thing about it is he's been through a lot in the last year alone. He fled the United States to go to Venezuela because he wanted to build a new life for himself. He found out, much to his dismay, that he entered his own nightmare, that Venezuela was not the country for Michael Rupert. On one of the nights that he was there, as I was reading from his account on FromTheWilderness.com right now, where all the archives have been released to be free, all the back archives, there are no more subscriptions, because he wants to make the publication available to all because he no longer can maintain the publication from TheWilderness.com. And he was at a club one night and someone slipped him a date rape drug. And he woke up in his hotel room with his credit cards maxed out. Now, this was happening just the tail end of 2006. Following that, he ended up having some major trouble with his body medically. I believe it might have been his kidneys. And so he was fortunate enough to get a medical care even though he has no medical insurance. You see, guys like me, Rupert, just because we're out there, and I don't want to put myself at the level of Rupert, he's actually been out there for years, I haven't. But a lot of us aren't doing this for the money, nor are we rich. We struggle just like you. We encounter police and encounter situations that are highly negative, just like you, but that's why I am doing what I'm doing. If I have time, I'd like to share about what the Portland police were engaged in last Saturday night at 2 o'clock in the morning on 4th Avenue. I almost got ran down by some horses just for being on the sidewalk because they were trying to premeditatively engage in mob control. And, you know, this is happening across the board, but my point with Michael Rupert is people make decisions in their life many times, do something better for humanity, putting humanity first instead of themselves. With Rupert, he ended up walking into a nightmare, and the Venezuelan government did not trust what he calls a, quote, gringo ex-cop. So now he's in Canada and looking for his next spot to migrate to. And I wish him the best of luck, because sometimes, my friends, it is not easy to fight this fight that we are engaged in today. The next interview that I conducted after Rupert was Leah Lewis, but after that, which is what this is, I'm going to show you a quick clip from Bob Bowman, which is the former Space Wars director while it was still secret under both Ford and Carter. His name is Dr. Bob Bowman, and we were talking about space weapons that were being developed at that time and continue to be developed at this time as we prepare for future wars upon the battlefield. And with that, we'll be right back and get back to the phone calls. See you then.
Reagan's Joint Chiefs asked me in 1983 to speak out to Congress and to the American people and warn them about this military lunacy. I sat down with members of Reagan's own Joint Chiefs, and we said, what's this thing going to cost if it's carried to completion? And we each wrote a little number on a piece of paper, and then we showed it to each other, and we came up with the same number, $1 trillion. We found that a few pounds of metal, properly shaped, fired at the Earth from space, would impact like a meteor, dig a crater, and at least in theory be capable of destroying hardened military targets like missile silos and command bunkers totally without warning. And it's funny because one time in the 80s I was in a debate with a colonel from the Star Wars program, and he was trying to deny that this program existed. And in his rebuttal, he said, now, Colonel Bowman, you know very well that that program for uranium projectiles guided with GPS doesn't exist. And so he released classified details of the program that I had never mentioned, while at the same time trying to say the program didn't exist. Well, of course it did, and it's very similar to the rods from God.
Now, on the topic of Bob Bowman, he's actually going to be coming to Portland, I believe, and speaking on June 21st. Also, David Ray Griffin's going to be coming on May 21st, and Mike Schultz, who's a producer here at PCM, and he's been on a few shows of Outside the Box in the early days, is going to come on and do a promo for that as well. On the topic of Bob Bowman, you have countless numbers of former military officials and other government officials that have come clean with their concerns about the official conspiracy theory of 9/11, among other things. In that clip, he was talking about space weapons, but he continues to this day to question the official story of 9/11 being a former fighter jet. He actually flew 100-some combat missions in Vietnam. And so with that, we're going to go to your calls in between the videos, but this next clip, which we're going to get ready for, also comes from another former government official who worked in the Reagan administration. So this activism is not limited to the grassroots. It's a matter of whether this is being talked about in the mainstream or not, and if they go beyond the puppet, the wrapping on the Coca-Cola bottle, known to many of you as George W. Bush and Tony Blair. So with that, we'll be back in just a little bit. Here's Paul Craig Roberts, and he was on the program, I believe, yeah, it was about 1.5 years ago. We'll be right back.
It's certainly a new thing here because the American spirit, the old American Revolution spirit, has been replaced by a Jacobin spirit, the spirit of the French Revolution, and the Bush administration, filled as it is with neoconservatives who are Jacobins in spirit, intend to force American ways on the rest of the world, starting with the Middle East. So it's very aggressive, just as the French Revolution was very aggressive toward Europe, determined to impose the French Revolution on the rest of Europe. It led into the Napoleonic Wars that went on for 1/4 century. We may be witnessing the American neoconservatives doing the same thing toward the rest of the world, determined to impose an American system beginning on the Middle Eastern countries. This implies a lot of wars, yet there's no public support for this war, the way there was in France, at least initially.
Paul, you mentioned neocons.
So I don't know how they're going to push this war thing when the people are already fed up.
And we're back. Mike Schultz is with us. We had a little fire drill or fire alarm going off there earlier. What was going on out there, Mike?
You know, I think it must be a conspiracy, Alex. Somebody's trying to shut down your show or something.
No,
but
seriously.
Everything is fine now. Yeah.
Really? What was it?
Another fire drill at the station, yeah.
And the cops are here out there, but they're not here for me.
Exactly.
Good thing. Hopefully they football on the TV. Maybe they'll learn something.
Yeah, well, I just want to congratulate you on 100 shows. You're a real testament that one person can really make a huge difference. Who would have thought 2 years ago you came out of nowhere? You have interviewed all the big stars in the business, everyone from David Icke to, you know, Mike Rupert, all the big names. Congratulations.
Thanks. But yeah, and I appreciate the praise, but my outlook on it is that I hope it just spawns more as I have been shown things, and I went and did my own research after I heard other people claiming things. I didn't take it at face value, and you know, I wanted to find out the facts for myself, and I'm seeing a lot more people do that today that weren't doing that when I got started just a couple years ago. I mean, it was a very foreign thing to talk about these things a couple years ago. Now it's pretty easy to find other people that understand what we're talking about.
Well, as we like to say, the dance floor is getting very crowded. Even Rosie O'Donnell, is, you know, talking about it on mainstream TV. Who would have thunk it?
Yeah.
You know. So as most of you know, I'm with Portland 911 Truth. We meet at Laughing Horse Books every Wednesday. You can come and join us, talk about 911 Truth, meet people like us. And I really want to thank you for over 100 shows. You have always kept the focus on 911 Truth because it is relevant. It's not something that happened 5 years ago. The war in Iraq today, people dying today, is directly related to foreign policy, which is related to 911, correct?
Correct.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about, you know, when I got into this movement, it was the dark days of 911. It was 2002. Very few of us were really active citizens questioning these basic questions. We have a system called NORAD. Shouldn't they have stood down that day and intercepted those planes? Mm-hmm. Cell phones don't really work at that height, do they?
Mm-hmm. Alive hijackers.
How come we couldn't hear the full air traffic controller tapes? We always hear those during major accidents. Mm-hmm. How come the supervisors went in and ripped them all up and threw them in the trash can? There's lots of video of the Pentagon, 80 cameras around there. How come we couldn't see any of it? Basic questions as citizens. During those dark days, we were called conspiracy nuts, tinfoil hat, lunatics. We needed somebody with credibility to step forward. That man, after Mike Rupert, was the professor, David Ray Griffin. He brought a dignity to our movement. He's a professor. He brought forward a coherent argument. The book, The New Pearl Harbor, and he really kick-started our movement, and he is coming to Portland. We want all of you to get off your couch on May 21st, come down to Portland State University. Come down to Smith Hall. It's $5 or $10. You will not be turned away. You can get the tickets at Laughing Horse Bookstore or just show up at the door Monday, May 21st. David Ray Griffin. Let's all go.
Outstanding. You know, this summer I want to get involved in a lot more projects, and hopefully I'll have time to talk about that later on. But with 9/11, there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples, and they actually are increasing by the day. We're seeing more pieces of information about 9/11 rise from the underground. And the thing about 9/11 is, I was talking about norms and defining norms and how norm is really abnormal in terms of the general consciousness consensus. And it seems that if we want to be conformists and be a part of the normie crowd, then we have to alter our rationale and our logic. Yes, buildings just come down when planes hit them. Yes, passports are just randomly found at the bottom of the streets of Ground Zero in New York City. Yes, hijackers are normally found alive after they're allegedly hijacking a building and crashing them into buildings. Absolute insanity.
Absolutely, and the one thing that really clarified it for me is I went and saw William Rodriguez, the head janitor, speak. He told me about bombs in the basement. He was the last man out of the World Trade Center. Go online, William Rodriguez. Once you read his story and Google it, they will not let him on live television in America. He's on in other countries, Cuba and Spain or wherever, but they won't let him on in America. Once I heard his story, bombs in the basement, people being burned by bombs, then I knew it was an inside job. It was a setup.
People have a very small window at this point in history to wake up, and we're seeing more scare after scare after scare after scare. Infinium globally outside of George W. Bush's jurisdiction in this never-ending war on terror. And that's, of course, one of the things I was mocking here in this next clip as they attempted for a period of a few hours to convince us there may have been an attack on Capitol Hill, when in fact nothing was wrong at all. Following that is my interview with Jack Blood, a broadcaster on the Genesis Communications Network. We'll be right back in just a few.
You're looking at Kimberly Schneider, who just spoke with us about 10 minutes ago, waiting to give a press. Obviously, he's waiting for the okay for all the TV channels and newspapermen to be clicked in.
Thank you, Larry.
I think.
Thank you, Larry.
Someone just said, hold on, as you know,
right,
the press controls things.
The life of a Schneider.
Anytime now.
Schneider. Kimberly, whenever you're ready, CNN
Whenever you're ready.
My name is Sergeant Kimberly Schneider, public spokeswoman for the United States Capitol Police.
What's your name again?
Sergeant Kimberly Schneider.
Can I get 2 minutes before you start, please?
The first name is Kimberly. The last name is Schneider. That's Sergeant Kimberly Schneider. I do have some good news to report tonight. We are preparing for re-entry in the Russell building.
Oh, right.
Test results have been cleared, and all the test results are actually negative, so that's very good news. We're preparing for re-entry right now, and everyone who's in the garage is going to be allowed to go back into the building shortly. Are there any questions? We have a good outcome tonight,
No
so we're
questions,
all very happy
that's
about
it.
this.
You know, here we are in the information age, and we're probably dumber than we've ever been. That's a bit ironic, I guess we would have to say. But, you know, this is because a good portion of our nightly newscast is eaten up by, you know, feel-good stories and stories about control. And, you know, a good example is the gentleman that was shot on the airplane down there in Miami last week or the week before. You know, here's a pretty good example of what antidepressants do to people. Of course, that was completely left out of the story. Right. And then just the second the story's still hot, you've got people out shilling for more control. You know, if we had more fingerprinting, Alex, if we had more databasing, if we had some iris scanners in the airport, maybe something like this wouldn't happen. So you see why it's important for us to try to clarify, you know, this glut of information. I feel that that's what we do, and I think that's one of the most important reasons for our existence. We have to let people know what is important and what isn't important, and that's not to say that we're preaching at people and trying to tell people what to think, but, you know, minimally getting things on the record that are so important, life and death important for our families, important for our children, and I'm really proud to be a part of that infrastructure.
And if you want to listen to Jack Blood, GCNlive.com. And you can listen to him, I believe it's from 12 to 2 Pacific Standard Time on Networks 1 and 3. Couple other really brief things that we want to go over because this is the 100th show. We want to give you an opportunity to discuss, if you can, what forms of solutions are you already involved in. We understand the problem. We understand now what's happening to this country. If you're not, and I know I've been really extreme in the past, I love you. I care about you. I hope you get it. But right now, we are entering a new phase of tyranny across the board. And, you know, this show really is for those that really want to take the next jump in evolution consciously, as well as understanding what's happening with the New World Order. For those that really don't care, don't want to, I can't change that, and I can't stop the behaviors of other people. I can only do my part and hope that you, of course, get involved in the next American Revolution as well. There's a lot of different updates that we have over the past couple of weeks and this week. One of them pertains to Howard Hunt, and we're going to go over this really briefly because before we had 9/11, we had JFK. Well, Howard Hunt in the conspiracy books and Jim Marrs, Rule by Secrecy, and some of the other books that were made on JFK, actually Marrs has made a couple on JFK, and many others. Howard Hunt's name has come up time after time after time. Yeah. And he was lying on his deathbed, apparently, just recently. And he confessed, and Mike, you've read the story as well, and this is available on the web, to being involved in the JFK assassination.
Well, those of you that studied JFK know that there were pictures of 3 mysterious tramps or bums in kind of shabby clothing, and it turned out to be 3 government agents. One of them was Woody Harrelson's father, and the other one was E. Howard Hunt. The photographs match. So for years, everyone's tried to get his story. Even Kevin Costner went down to see him when he was filming JFK, tried to get the truth out of him, and he couldn't. So finally, a couple years ago, E. Howard Hunt is on his deathbed. He's about to die. And he gives a 20-minute tape recording to his son, giving the names, and he implicates Lyndon B. Johnson as orchestrating with members of the CIA and the FBI and some Cuban hitmen, a lot of power players behind the scene as being there with Lee Harvey Oswald killing Kennedy.
He described this also in terms of who logistically was involved in this as not necessarily the CIA directly or active CIA agents, but retired or veterans or those tied to LBJ as well, those doing private black op contract work. So definitely this is not something that was may not have been sanctioned on certain levels, but was still orchestrated and developed either way. And that MP3 is available. The man by the name of Saint Hunt,
his son.
Okay, has been going on national radio, but the mainstream radio, other than Coast to Coast and the Jones Show, has not been covering this. This is not news.
Well, we live in two worlds. You know, if you watch NBC or ABC, you never hear about it. But then those of us who are on the internet and are watching shows like yours,
Right.
it's a headline story during the past week. This is as close to the truth as we're ever going to get with JFK, because so many of the principles are dead. You know, but what's interesting is E. Howard Hunt did not die after this confession, and for a couple of years he tried desperately to get that tape back. And he did get it back,
Right,
but
well,
luckily St. Hunt made a copy.
He taped it and asked his son to wait until he passed on before releasing it.
Why would he want it back so badly if it were a false confession? And he absolutely wanted it back from his son, you know, but luckily he made a copy.
Well, I think more information, of course, is going to come out about this. On the topic, though, of JFK and 9/11, there are a lot of people that actually don't trust the government on either of these issues, and there are many polls that say, well, over 50% of Americans question the government's official story of 9/11, or you have a CNN poll that'll say 90%. Regardless, have we seen 9/11 truth come to the forefront of the average American mind to actually move on and affect change? I would say no, but it has reached a lot of people to where people are questioning 9/11, but there isn't the mobilization that we have been asking for. And that is a problem, because it's one thing to, on one level, intellectually understand it. It's another level to be brave enough to speak out, to talk to your family, your friends, to call the local media, and to call into right-wing or even left-wing talk show hosts to bring up the issue of 9/11. It's more than just the intellect of knowing about this superstate, much more.
Absolutely.
We have a phone call? All right, how you doing, caller?
There, Alex?
Hey.
Hey, you said you wanted to hear from people that had answers to, and were doing constructive things for solutions.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, I had a lot of dreams about children's hospitals and whatnot, man. And you know, I hear Pastor Mary on there talking about that autism center, and I see that all the time. I see the Palestinian children. I see them weeping, you know, and they're really getting the. Not that the adults are any more mature; they're irresponsible and more childish than most of the children. And you know, it's when you see people giving money to PBS and all these different so-called charities. You know, you think about Dornbeckers and you know, and St. Jude, and think about those people. That's what people need to think about. You know, don't think about yourself anymore, man. I'm not talking about you, Alex. I'm talking about people who just think about themselves. You know, if you focus on service, and you'll lose yourself, and you'll really find the answer there.
I think next to food, the other commodity, of course, that's more important than even a firearm, and thank you for your call, is sharing, is giving back. Like in terms of the planet, we've taken and we've taken and we've taken, but we don't give back. In terms of interpersonal relationships, we're very separated when it comes to connecting with another human being. And now we connect through MySpace, we connect through the grid, we connect through the internet. We're online or on our own email service, communicating that way as opposed to face-to-face or through a cell phone. And now more information is coming out about cell phones and the health risks that are associated with the use of the cell phone. What kind of society are we becoming? So sharing is key, and one of your most valuable commodities is your ability to, of course, not only share, as I said, but to love and have compassion for another human being in a world where we are becoming more and more incrementally desensitized by the day.
You know, we used to take care of charities right in the community within the church instead of having big government come in with all of these programs. And it's not a bad idea to think about that again, community-based charity.
And we can go into the Federal Reserve and how if we did not have a system like that, we would have more wealth distributed in our society amongst us. So the necessity for these services will not be there. I never hear that argument.
Yeah, anytime the government sets up a charity program, 50% right off the top is going to go to waste and administration.
Yeah.
So think about your own churches, your own community. You can do it yourself directly.
Right. I believe that to be the absolute truth. We have a call, don't we? Go ahead, caller.
Hi, Alex.
Hi.
Barrett. I'd like to say a comment. You know, I notice, like, every day, every work day, you know, you see everybody just driving to work, and you know, just, and I'm you know, I'm driving too, and it's like you have to do it. If you don't do it, you know, it's not like you can grow your own food and sustain your own
I hear you, man. I hear you 110%.
And what it does, it makes people like that guy who stabs a gal in the McDonald's, and then that college guy who shot the people up in the college.
Yeah.
It creates that kind of stuff because people don't pay attention to each other. We forget that we're human, that we're not machines, and we're expected to work 6, 12, 18, whatever hours, however many hours some people work.
You know, one thing that I've realized, and I really want to point out there today, the police state, this martial law system, surveillance, it really is not the root of the problem. It's just another symptom. And you talk about us becoming machines. Well, in the book 1984, it talked about the future being a world where a Buddha's stomping on a human face forever. Well, the way we're going being unsustainable, we won't have forever to have our faces stepped on.
Well, I don't know, if you look back into history, this has been going on for thousands of years.
It has, but we've reached a point now with the technology that we use today where there is no guarantee that the species, control aside, what's happening with the environment and the climatic change, we may not make it through to even fully see.
Honeybees are dying all over the United States.
We're in a crisis right now. We're in a crisis and we need to be prepared. We need to investigate alternative water supply sources, food supply sources. And I understand it's very difficult to garden, so let's take it down a notch for those that can't. And take the time.
Here's another one, too.
I was going to say, though, real quick, investigate co-ops in organic farming and organic food. I'm recommending that to every single caller out there.
Absolutely.
If you care about this show, your own health, and you're concerned about the New World Order, investigate how you can change what you put in your body today.
Oh, Alex, I got another question. Those the voter stuff we got this time, when they were talking about the Mayor Potter and all that, I just said no on everything because, for one thing, I couldn't hardly understand it. The kind of wording they use, I've got like college comprehension, reading, all that. I was in the service for 3 years. I got an honorable. I got medals, all this and that.
They do the same thing with the Access TV bills, the legislation that want to take away this facility. They word it in a way that if you do not write it, they can actually make up a word really that only means something to them. They've done it before. You'll be looking at it going, what are they talking about? Unless you're highly educated in that field, you don't even know what's in the bill. And it's the same thing with the other bills in the House and Senate.
Yeah, you have to be a lawyer to understand.
Did you understand there was 4 amendments or whatever it was they called them, and the way it was reading was like they were trying to give a bunch of power to Mayor Tom Potter, and he's the one that's responsible for these traffic light cameras and all this stuff.
Yeah, he is, and he's remaining somewhat mute on that. And but you know what? We're seeing this across the nation. Mayor after mayor after mayor are allowing this because they believe it's necessary. But we need to move on with more clips, but I thank you for calling, though.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Mike, thanks for coming on.
All right,
I appreciate it.
Congratulations. Here's to 100 more shows, all right?
Yeah.
See you at Portland State University, May 21st.
May 21st. What time was that again?
7 p.m.
Okay. All right.
Thanks
7 p.m. all the way up until
David
about 9.
Ray Griffin.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Great. And I think I'm going to be interviewing him for the 3rd time that day, so that's going to be cool as well.
Okay.
And it's going to be, by the way, just so people know, he has a particular focus, though, with 9/11 in this. His book is about debunking the debunkers. I believe that's the...
Popular Mechanics wrote a real hit piece on our movement, and he's responding to that now. So the argument continues, and it gets more specific now with his new book.
In this next clip, you're going to witness for yourself how the surveillance society enters certain aspects of our culture that we didn't even think that they would even contemplate doing. We'll be right back.
Yeah, like it was aimed towards the stalls, but you could see, like if you stood in front of the last urinal, you could see your whole entire body.
So that is almost perverse. I mean, that is perverse. It's like, I wouldn't even want to go to the bathroom if I knew somebody was watching me. I mean, you're not allowed any privacy when you're in school? I mean, I'm sure those were the things where you were thinking about when you removed that camera.
Yeah, I didn't like it at all.
Right.
And then your school called or your mom called the school, and the school suspended you for 5 days?
Yep. Well, I took the camera down, and then the next day they suspended me. And then 5 days later I went back.
I will tell you this. What you did was right. What you did was right, and as you grew up, you're going to find more and more people saying what you did was wrong. I don't know if you've noticed, but several people did exactly what you did after you did it. Some of them were expelled. There were some high school kids that did exactly what you did the week later. So what you did was set a precedent, set an example that, hey, it is not cool, it is not the right thing to do to film young boys going to the bathroom. That was an interesting interview as well. I mean, we're talking about cameras in the school bathroom. First, he looks up at the camera, he sees it, then he's like, I wonder what that is doing there. So what he does is he crawls up and he takes the camera and he takes it home to his mother. His mother looks at it, calls the school. School suspends Mac for taking down the camera. They call it destruction of school property. Apparently the principal put it there to stop graffiti in the bathrooms, but none of the parents were notified prior to that happening. But we see this more and more in the public educational school system. It's a machine. It is a living, breathing machine that has a purpose to assimilate the youth of America to where they're going to be in the next couple of years after they leave high school. But what kind of world do we have now where the cost of education here in Oregon, just Oregon, I mean the whole nation, but in Oregon we have our own problems, to where less people next year and the year after that are going to even be going to community college. What is this going to mean for the future of America? A whole wave of children coming out of overcrowded high schools around the nation, not entering college, and those that are in college competing for fewer and fewer jobs. Well, that's big bucks for two industries, I can guarantee you, the prison industrial complex and to some degree the military industrial complex. But with the prison industrial complex and the concept of someone who is in an environment becoming their environment, if our cities turn to slums across the board, there will be, that's right, job security for your local police departments. There will be larger budgets for the prison industrial complex, which is becoming more and more privatized by the day. It's an industry. Everything now is apparently come down to cause and effect, but the obvious is hidden in plain sight. Microchip implants are a long ways away from being forced down your throat because they've learned how to make a chip out of you anyway by your thumbprint, by your face, by the national ID card as they're trying to push through in 2008, just next year, and Oregon's moving right along with the government's plans. Although I will state that New Hampshire overwhelmingly is not. Actually, on the topic of the North American Union, there are 13 states that are unified in their opposition to the North American Union that have passed legislation against it, but none of it has, not all of it has passed both the House and the Senate. So I guess maybe they're not completely unified, but we will see what becomes of the North American Union in the cashless society control grid. But for the most part, a lot of this is already here. A lot of this is already happening. And a lot of people get so angry and frustrated because if they cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel, that maybe they should just give up. And my friends, this is going to dictate, of course, how we react now is going to dictate the lifestyle that we're leading in the next couple years. It's come down to that. And we'll go to the next phone call at that. Go ahead, caller.
Hello?
Hey.
Hey, Alex. I just had a question on what you thought about the Nazi influence on the military-industrial complex in America and about the Prescott Bush's relationship with funding Hitler in the World War II.
Well, the New York Times wrote about that in 1941. He was never prosecuted, but he was investigated. And on the topic of the military-industrial complex, it was always it was a game of chess between the United States and Russia. Prior to the Cold War, we imported the rocket propulsion scientists, the mine scientists, to come work for us here in the United States. And from that point, we saw the OSS turn into the CIA with a lot of early recruitment of Nazi members. It came down to who's going to get them being the Russians or us. And they had done so many experiments on Jews that there was a lot of medical information that came from the Nazi experiments, both in terms of the medical establishment, which is also formed by early Nazis, and the psychiatric medical establishment. So it's the military-industrial complex, but also medical, pharmaceutical as well.
Okay, well, do you see what do you see the correlations are in about what now 60 years after World War II? Do you still see the Nazis influencing us that all that much?
Well, we have the fasces that still sit up to this day in Congress. The same symbol that they used down in that time, in the 40s, still stands right now in Congress. The fasces, the symbol of fascism. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels. And, of course, the parallels that we talk about in this program, for one thing, is the Reichstag fire of 1933. And, of course, the situation with Poland in 1939, using problem, reaction, solution to convince the population of a false threat, a false enemy, a false flag terror operation, to get the public to allow what Adolf Hitler had in store for the population.
Right on, right on. That's all I needed to know, Alex, man. Thanks a lot, and congratulations on your show.
Thanks. And the next aspect of that as well was surveillance. They gave the Jews different colored ID. It was either ID bracelets or ID cards. I forget at the moment, but they gave the Jewish people an illusion of picking the card they were going to hold their identity, or one card or one color having a symbolic interpretation of how much Jew was in them. A lot of them bought into that lie and tried to beat the system and cheat the system, but in the end, everybody with the cards that ended up going to the camp was killed, not just part of them, but all of them. So they were conned at that time to accept their own national ID card system. So again, we come back to where we are right now at ground zero, center stage. Even if our government was made up of angels, you would not want to restrict the liberties that we enjoy today, because if we were to do that, it opens up the door, the Pandora's box, if you will, for a dictator to step in and take total control over Congress and the population. And we are so well positioned for that. It is not Bush. He is not going to be the one to finally lead us towards the end. There will be another, guaranteed. Do we have another phone call?
No, but you're almost an hour 2.
Yeah, we are about an hour in. Well, we're about to enter the second hour of Outside the Box for our 100th special. We thank you for tuning in, and we'll get back to more phone calls after the next clip. Can you imagine microchip implants, brain chips, if you will, in individuals, fellow citizens that walk on the same side of the street as you do? Far out? Think so? Take a look at this next clip, and then you tell me it's far out. We'll be right back. So tell me about how you got involved in this process.
Essentially I started, looking around for different types of access control mechanisms so I could easily get into my home and office, a few years back. And I was looking at, biometrics, fingerprint scanning, iris scanning, something that would allow me to gain access to these important places that I'm always, carrying keys around for without actually having to carry around the keys, because, I'm kind of the guy that forgets them or, leaves them laying around or whatever. So I looked at these other technologies, and they're just too big and too bulky, too difficult and expensive to get implemented. So I looked at RFID, which is being used all over the place for access, building access. People are real familiar with key cards, that kind of thing. But I didn't really give it too much thought because it required a key card. You had to carry it around, and I was trying to avoid that. So I actually went ahead and saw that the chips that cats and dogs were getting, and I said, well, there's RFID technology that could easily be used, for this type of scenario. So I looked around and found some chips that weren't necessarily used for pets, but they were more kind of an open, standard chip that's used in a lot of, OEM reader hardware, and decided to get a couple of those and played around with them and then got them implanted.
Now, on the topic of the microchip implant, it's a complicated issue because a lot of people are perceiving a world where one day a bill will get passed where we will also, in addition to having a national ID card, have to take an implantable microchip. Well, that may be possible, but as I said before the clip, it is not necessary to control you. But the way technology is moving, the way man is interfacing on a level that we could not foresee 20 years ago, the way our founding fathers could not foresee. that it may become inevitable in 30, 40 years. But will we be around still to see that? Now, that's something that I don't know or have the answer to, but it certainly raises the questions about what kind of world do we really live in? Is it anything like they told us it was? No, it is nothing like they tell us it is. Now, David Icke, in this next clip, was inspirational to me when I read the book, The Truth Will Set You Free, and he laid it out in a pretty clear-cut way without bringing in the reptilian influence, focusing on the things that he could prove. And I don't judge David Icke for the fact that he has discussed alternative views on who controls the planet, because he is one of the most brilliant researchers, lecturers, writers, speakers on the circuit today on some of these issues. Discounting what you may not agree with. It's an old philosophical way to look at life. You take what you want, you look for the truth, and what does not apply to you, you leave the rest. And with that, we will be right back. Again, you're watching the second hour of the 100th edition of Outside the Box. This is my interview with David Icke in August 2005.
The way that people are controlled to a vast extent is by limiting the information that they receive. We can only perceive possibility on the basis, overwhelmingly, of the information we have of what's possible. For instance, a few centuries ago, when people said the Earth was round for the first time, the population and the experts said that's ridiculous, it's impossible, because the people on the bottom would fall off. Now, that made sense on the limited knowledge that they were given. Once you introduce the law of gravity, however, what appeared to be ludicrous and bizarre starts to take on a very logical picture. And what they're doing symbolically all the time is keeping the law of gravity from us. In other words, information that would allow us to see the true nature of reality and the infinite nature of possibility. And so when you talk about the world being manipulated from other realms, other dimensions of existence, people go, it's impossible, you know, no. But what is kept from us is just how little we can see. We are actually virtually blind in terms of what we can see. Of what is projected by mainstream science to exist in this universe in terms of matter, mass, and what have you, the electromagnetic spectrum is around 0.005% of what is projected to exist in this universe. What humans can actually see, what we call visible light, is a fraction of that 0.005%. In other words, when we look through our eyes, we are not seeing everything that exists in that space as we instinctively think.
Right.
We are seeing a tiny, tiny frequency range that our five senses and sight can access. And just beyond that frequency range that we can see is infinity.
Now, I know for a lot of you, the idea that we are not the only ones in this universe. For a lot of you, that is the craziest thing you have ever heard. Now, from the macrocosm to the microcosm is infinity, each direction. How do we know? There aren't even planets out there that have human life, where beings look just like us. Now, I have no way to prove that, nor do I necessarily believe that. We don't know. We don't know. And with you knowing intellectually right here and now that the government is lying to you about very basic things, and in many cases we lie to ourselves about very basic things, you've got to wonder, what else are we missing along the path that we're on now? Now, in terms of questioning history and our human origin, I would like to point out that the Old Testament reads like a Cliff Notes to these Sumerian texts that Zechariah Sitchin talked about. And when you read about Adam, or Adama, according to the Sumerian texts, they describe the first human being that was created by an extraterrestrial race that made a combination of them and their DNA and the salt of the earth. Everything is right alongside what the Bible is saying in the Old Testament. Even with the names they're using, we don't know our own history. And particularly knowing our own history isn't necessarily going to save us at this point because, again, we're entering the last round. You have to keep an open mind if you even want to get a fraction, as David Icke was talking about, of what is possible in this interdimensional universe that we live in, as we're trapped in the five-sense reality. What lies beyond that? Don't you ever wonder? I mean, what is it about the human species as we look up at the stars, the Big Dipper? We all have that feeling. We want to be up there. We want to go somewhere. We want to see what life is like on other planets. But are we ready to do something like that? No matter what NASA says, we're not. Now they claim that they want to go and explore the moon for helium-3, another energy source. My friends, look a little closer and you'll find out that that's not the case. We're animals here on this planet. The only thing that they want the base for is for more space weapons and maybe energy purposes as well. But the domination of space, as Robert Bowman was talking about, is the utmost priority of this government and as crucial as they see it to national security. And it's a race against time over who is going to dominate space, Russia, China, or the United States. Right now, Russia is behind the curve. The United States is leading with China right alongside us. And with that, we'll go to the next phone call. Go ahead, caller.
Hey, Alex.
Hey.
It's Jan.
Hey, Jan.
And I am so proud of you. I tell you what, you are a young man of integrity, courage, strength, and power, and I am proud to have you in my house every Thursday night. I called about a DNA issue, but I want to touch on the last subject. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with Dr. Stephen Greer?
Yes.
That man has given everything up. He's in emergency room. He was at the head doctor, and he says the extraterrestrials that are trying to save us have given us the technology. You are aware of all that.
Yeah, you know, and I'm aware of a lot of,
I know.
But the one reason that I haven't made a big part of the show, you know, and it's a very tough thing because I come across information that should be talked about, but I want to tailor now what I'm talking about to what we can do about where we're at. And I think that if we were supposed to know all of these things, that we would.
Right.
But for some reason, there's some sort of knowledge that's just shielded off from us. Maybe it's because we're humans. I don't have the explanation for everything, but there are things that we cannot see that we know that dogs and cats and other animals can see. Mm-hmm. They're kind of tapped into the universe, to the earth, in a way that we aren't.
Right.
1 second there. We also see situations with the tsunami in Southeast Asia where we saw the elephants going up to the hill.
And helping people.
Yeah, and
people.
pulling their owners with them, saving their lives.
Yes.
We need to get back to that frame of mind to where we can feel the danger instinctively because we're not so entranced and disillusioned with the grid that we can't even see our hand in front of our face.
Right, like that young man was talking about.
Yeah.
You know, about having to go to work. And you're right, the time is coming. I mean, the veil has, like, parted. I think it was thinning, but I think for some of us it's parted, and you are a good messenger. What I wanted to I want other people to give a chance to call, but I want you to know, and I don't know if you're aware of this, I had a grandbaby born, the last one, August 15th of 2005. I walked into the room, the hospital room, just in the nick of time when the nurse was bringing my granddaughter's DNA. They took my granddaughter's DNA. They are DNA testing newborn infants. Now, I saw this with my own eyes. I'm not crazy.
I don't think you are.
And I looked at my daughter and my son-in-law. They're not ready. They don't want to hear it. They got scared into it. Just like when you held up the little fingerprints that you had, you know, that your mother took you, and the good people want to save you in case you're stolen. And just in case something would happen, they could identify her remains. Now, they have DNA database on newborn infants.
I know.
I
see that now.
am appalled.
I'm appalled too.
And it's happening, and they are escalating.
This is global. People have to understand this is global. Please, those out there that think this is a Bush thing, please, I am begging you on my knees.
Right.
Look deeper. Please, no one died when Clinton lied. I mean, you know, we can't even communicate anymore. Our country is so divided. Please, this is bigger than Bush. You have to think global. This is a global economy. This is a global world. We're already in the New World Order. It's just a matter of who's going to run it.
You are
It's
exactly.
just a matter of who's going to run the CEO board. That's it.
And what are we going to do about it individually?
Knowing what we can't stop, geez, I wonder if they're creating this karma in their lives, where does my karma fill in? That's not my karma. That's not my doing. The genocide is not my doing, but it's my karma. As much as this feels really real, I know my hands feel real. I know the table feels real. I know my skin feels real, but I know it's really an illusion because it's just where I am right now. I'm moving around in a vehicle. We're just in these vehicles. But when this is all said and done, it's what we did in this life, not for your national sovereignty. That's just one layer of it. But for humanity, that's going to mean something in the end, you know, no matter what you see. We have to be spiritually healthy for the things that we see so we can maintain our consciousness to a point where we don't get involved in the killing, or we don't get involved in the killing or the cannibalism or the other things that happen when the food supply is cut off.
Yes, and that terrifies me.
And I will die. I will die starving.
Me too.
And just, you know, get myself ready to greet God because we don't have to be afraid anymore. We can't stop this or the situation with the bees. Why should we be afraid or even get upset? Because, damn it, I believe everything happens for a reason and that I chose to be here at this time. So if I chose to be here at this time and we're all here at this time, then what do we need to do?
Yeah. And
that's all
I'm with you. I am with you and proud to be one with you.
Yeah, you were there at the DU conference, right?
Yes.
And it's okay. You know, there was hardly anyone there. Can you testify to that?
Well,
Except for the ones working on the project.
People don't want to know. People don't want to know. And I'm going to hang up and let you carry on.
Thank you. And I want to keep commenting on it, but we got some more great clips to go, but think about it. I mean, think about it. I'm not going to know that it's time to take my hand off the stove when I accidentally touch it until my hand is burning. I'm not going to go to the dentist until my teeth are hurting. I'm not going to stop and save my money until I am broke. And we are not changing this country until we are starving to death. This is Ted Gunderson from a clip from a few years ago, another whistleblower, a former FBI official, who talked about government-sponsored terror in both Oklahoma City and 9/11. And more phone calls and information on the way when we come back. We'll be right back.
There's two elements within our government. There's the covert and the overt. Now, the overt are the fellows with the suit and tie that go out to the bank robbery and interview witnesses and ask how tall was the suspect, what race was he, how'd he weigh, and all that sort of thing. The covert operation, which is what we're talking about as far as the terrorism element is concerned, is very actively involved, and they have infiltrated almost every level of our government, including Washington, D.C., congressmen, politicians, and it's a frightening situation because they are in control, and this covert operation is very frankly what's behind the whole terrorist movement in this country.
How long has this criminal element been here in the United States with the CIA? I mean, can we go all the way back to the time that Nazis were brought in to organize the CIA, or is that how far back we can go? Or the CIA or the FBI?
We can go back to 1776. In 1773, the Rothschild family commissioned Adam Weishaupt, a former Jesuit priest, to come up with the 25 goals to take over the world. And on May the 1st, 1776, May 1st being a communist holiday, by the way, he announced the 25 goals to take over the world. And these included, I won't go into all of them, of course, we don't have that much time, included control of the media, included elect your own people, meaning the Illuminati people. It's called the Illuminati, by the way. To positions of authority, to corrupt the youth through sex and drugs. If you can't elect your own people, to put your own tours in as advisors. And the list goes on and on and on. It reads like the Communist Manifesto, by the way.
Now, I want to go over this really briefly just to continue on the last thought. This show is changing now. This show is not just about the problem. I want survivalists on this show that are experts that live here in the Portland metro area that know how to identify edible plants. I am not paranoid. This is not a show about conspiracy theories here. It is time to get active. And let me tell you, my friends, it's not just about 9/11 truth. This is so far beyond. We ignored the problems for so long that this is really going to come down to survival. It's going to come down to survival. So we need gardeners, we need survivalists. We need to talk with another of other people in those areas that are beyond just what I have been bringing you. Now, we'll continue to bring you the news and the developments, the play-by-play of the execution of the New World Order, and of course their minions, the mainstream minions that use propaganda for them. But we need to, of course, kick it up a notch and take a closer look at what's happening here locally. And that's going to be a tough thing because this is a national show. So I want to focus on the things that apply to you wherever you live. The basic elements and items, things that you would want to have in your house. Getting stocked up on flashlights. I'm not trying to instill fear in you. Okay, and I know what it seems like I am, and who knows, who knows what's going to happen, but don't you feel better if you at least got prepared? That way you can focus on your happiness, your family, the real commodities, getting involved in sharing, getting involved in your community, getting to know your neighbors, and preparing yourself at the same time. And you can fight the info war at the front lines with the net and the MySpace and this and that. Just have a backup plan for when the glitch happens. And with that, we'll go to the next call. Caller.
Yeah?
Hey.
Hi. Just throwing it out there. I'm on the same level as you are. There's no reason to be, paranoid or anything like that. It's just that we got to be safe. You know what I'm saying?
And I think once people get closer to the earth and away from just the grid, they'll feel better as well. Things will change. But, I don't know if we're going to get to that point. And we have a lot of good things, in the society. I happen to like watching a Google video here and there. I happen to like, there aren't a lot of things of this world that I like in terms of technology, but there are things that help us out. I guess I'm using technology right now to transmit what I'm doing. But it has come to enslave us because our spiritual growth never kept up to par.
Yeah, I agree completely. I also found another good use of technology for this situation, if you want to know.
Mm-hmm.
I find that gay black porn is great.
And we got another clip coming up, but it goes to show you. I mean, does it not? Remember when I said until no one's hungry? You guys remember that? More manifestations. Start out with something good and he'll switch it. It's not connecting with him. None of this is connecting with you. And you can say that, but we and people watching, it's not going to fill us with joy to be angry at you and to spew venom back at you. Get prepared, you too, young man, on the larger issues, and you'll find out that the things you find are funny are actually not very funny at all. They involve your life. This is relevant. In the years to come, it's going to become more relevant, and I really hope that time will be years to come and not the summertime, because we could really see the effect of the bee disappearance during the summer crop season. I'm serious, my friends, and we're going to be reporting on that, on the cost of food throughout the summer. We're going to go to that call in just a sec, but we're running out of time, and I want to show you the next clip also from Jim Marrs. Jim Marrs wrote the book Rule by Secrecy, and he joined me and Mike, who was just in here, also about a couple years ago. And we'll be right back with that, and on to the next phone call.
because I'm trying to get people today to stop and think for themselves about what's going on. Now, my book, Ruled by Secrecy, tracks what I call the secret societies of today back through history. I call them secret societies, although they're not truly secret. They even have their own websites, and they publish publications and stuff. And I'm talking, of course, about the Trilateral Commission, which is nothing more than an offshoot of the more secretive Council on Foreign Relations, which by many accounts has dominated United States foreign policy since before World War II. The Council on Foreign Relations was created right after World War I as an effort to try to sway Americans into accepting what they call globalization. In other words, global government, one world military, one world economic system. At that time, they called it the League of Nations. But the League of Nations didn't work because the Congress of the United States at that time said, I don't think we're willing to give up our national sovereignty. So they created the Council on Foreign Relations to help try to push the idea for this globalization. And, of course, we see that in action today through secret society-connected trade organizations such as the World Trade Organization. Now, the inner core elite of these organizations, and just because somebody's a member of the Trilateral Commission or the Council on Foreign Relations, that does not make them some sort of sinister conspirator. A lot of them are in there for the business contacts, the social contacts, and a lot of them just want to rub elbows with the rich and powerful. But at the inner core of these societies, we find the same families and the same names, and we find people who go and attend the yearly meetings of what has become known as the Bilderbergers. They are so secretive, they don't even have a proper name. They just meet. They're called the Bilderbergers because they were first discovered meeting at the Bilderberg Hotel in Holland back in 1954. The Bilderbergers are comprised not only of corporate leaders and political leaders in the United States, but also of Europe and other areas such as Asia. Yeah. And they meet under armed guard, and no one is allowed to say what they're talking about. Now, this is disturbing to me because very high-ranking leaders in the United States have attended. Hillary Clinton in 1992 was a guest of the Bilderbergers, and that's why I think that we can probably look to her for presidential aspirations. But to me, the fact that they would all meet in secrecy and that we can't find out what they're doing, I mean, Alex, think what would happen if all the owners of the National Football League franchises were to meet in a big hotel under armed guard for several days and then come out and refuse to reveal what they talked about.
And they con you, and they con you, and they con you, you local activist Portlanders, as long as you are willing to believe what they're telling you. Okay, you understand what I'm talking about. John Edwards was just in Portland a couple nights ago. I didn't hear anybody protesting that. He's a Bilderberger. I mean, how stupid do they think you are? As stupid as we show them we are. And with that, we'll go to the next phone call. But we actually got to go through these pretty quickly because I actually got a couple more clips. How are you, caller?
Hi, how are you?
Hey.
Hi, have you ever heard of a place called Area 51?
Yeah, of course.
Because I firsthand experienced weird ships just, I do believe there's aliens out there, but I think the government is hiding it from the people, I don't understand why.
Yeah, well, there's a lot. That's a long conversation. Yeah, I don't even really know how to respond to that. There's a lot of stuff involved that we don't know. Also, Area 51, I believe, is a test project site along with other areas that you don't even know of for unmanned aerial vehicles and aircraft weaponry that they actually don't want us to know about. So I think that dovetails, at the very least, also in terms of UFO sightings. I believe a lot of this is government craft. But then again, you have the French report where they noted that half of the UFO sightings are unexplained. They released that back in February in France, and their website where they had all this information crashed because of all the hits they were getting. So there's definitely an interest in that area.
Yeah, because I read books on this. This is definitely my area right here. And it's just,
but if you're really interested and you want to look at something, because of what I understand about the Sumerian text and its similarity to the Old Testament, the Cliff Notes of the Sumerian text, check out whether either it be Sitchin's work, Jim Marrs and his work, and in terms of the Anunnaki and Nibiru. And some people believe that Nibiru is coming around again, which is also known as the 12th planet. I'm fairly objective on that. We are talking theories and speculation here, but I do find it to be an interesting area of research.
And one more question. Do you have a boner right now?
Uh-huh. It's amazing. So we're actually going to go through the rest of the clips for the night, unless, do we have caller ID there? There is. So we can make sure it's not the same. We're going to the next video here. Do we have another call?
Yes, you do.
Go ahead, caller.
My name is Richard Shaft, and I'd like to talk about the downfall of our economy.
Richard Shaft?
Yeah.
Are you the same guy that just called before?
Hold on, my dog's licking my...
All right. Now, since 2005, I hit the ground. I just kept running. I just kept working. I just kept producing shows. And it really wasn't a vacation, but I went down to Texas, and I want to show you some clips now for the remainder of the program. Of when I went down to Austin, Texas, and I interviewed a lot of different people. One of them was Alex Jones, which is this clip. But right before my interview with Alex Jones, this is a quick video I made back in 2005, actually on the old linear system, not even on the computer. It's the old wheels and the old footstep, old technology. But actually, the first way I learned how to edit, and I found it pretty fun, was linear editing. And that is, where you literally bump in a track over another track, not on the computer, but on tape. Well, that's definitely obsolete technology, but that's what I made this video on from different random clips. And then that's going to be followed by my interview with Alex Jones. And after that, we have a couple more clips, including, if I can get to it, my interview with John Stott Miller and Galen Ross. And with that, we'll be right back.
We're in danger of becoming like Argentina was. We have a group of people that have disappeared. We don't know who they are. We and they do not know why they are in prison. They have no legal counsel. Their families do not know where they are, but this is America, and that is wrong. We cannot allow the Constitution to be gutted. We cannot allow the structures that have protected our rights, that we have fought for, to simply be taken away in the stroke of a pen. The Attorney General, without congressional approval. This is not the Patriot Act we're talking about. This goes beyond the Patriot Act. Individual acts. There's nothing in the Patriot Act about listening in on attorney-client privilege. There's nothing about profiling thousands of young Arab men in communities across the country. There's nothing in the Patriot Act that allows the secret arrest and detention for indefinite periods of time of individuals we don't know who they are. It's the fascist act! He's gone too far. And we're here to say, stop it. It was said in the beginning that those who attacked our country did so because they despised our freedom. In fact, we are today in a country less free because of our own policies, and we must, the burden of defending America is on our shoulders today, here in this place, now.
Everybody knows that the dice are loaded. Everybody rolls with their fingers crossed. Everybody knows the war is over. Everybody knows.
This is Texas! And if you won't join us in freedom and see how you're being conned, let me assure you, remember the Alamo, remember Goliad, come and take it. Guaranteed. How many Hispanics and blacks? I don't care what color you are, as long as you want me to live in freedom. I want you to live in freedom.
Everybody knows that the boat is leaking. Everybody knows the captain lied. Everybody got this broken feeling, like their father or their dog.
The analogy is it's like a football team owner who owns both teams that go to the Super Bowl. Either way, he wins. But he wants to keep it real quiet that he owns both teams. So regardless of who wins, even if you have a real contest going on out on the field, the establishment globalists who are trying to build this one world government, they win. And some would say, yeah, but still it's a real football game. No, they set the rules. They put who they want into the game. They direct and control who is going to win that election. And so the Republicans and the Democrats will fight basically over a bunch of petty issues, but that's just rhetoric. When it gets down to brass tacks, they're unified. Now, we know most of the people on the march are great folks, wonderful people, and we want them to be educated. We want them to be educated on how they're being conned, on how they're being manipulated. There's a lot of alternative press and a lot of alternative media out there that just because the public doesn't trust the mainstream media, just because the public's waking up, a lot of them are like children. And so they go out and they believe anything that somebody's saying as long as they claim it's alternative. Oh, I have a magic machine for $1,000 that will heal you. Or, oh, I've got these vitamins that will, heal you. Or I've got this nose spray that'll make you not have a heart attack. And then people run into these opportunists, and then it kind of discredits things for them and they get out of the movement. People need to not believe what I've said. They need to check out what I've said. You need to research what I've said. You need to look into what I've said to verify it. Ronald Reagan would say this, trust but verify. And I agree with that statement. I'm not a huge fan of Ronald Reagan, but I agree with that statement. Trust but verify. And so don't just believe every person out there that's on a soapbox. In fact, you can trust yourself. You know that you mean well. You should become a leader. That's the key in this fight.
$1 million question to Alex Jones. You've heard it before. If all this is true, if all this is accurate, why are you still around?
Well, I get that question all the time. I mean, why are so many people alive? I mean, I don't want to compare myself to George Washington or somebody like Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, I'm just a little foot soldier in all of this. But if they kill me, it will only give attention to what I've done in my work. Also, there are thousands of prominent people of my stature that are speaking out, that are involved, that are informed, people who are more involved, people who are more influential. And, I don't want people to think that there aren't the occasional trials and tribulations, but those are really rewarding and invigorating and energizing. I mean, right here in the studio in Austin, Texas, I guess it was about 8 years ago, or longer, I walked out in the parking lot and 4 guys assaulted me. And Mike came out after they'd left, and I fought back and fought them off. And I was bleeding all over the place and a broken nose. And, Mike's seen it firsthand. I was told, you shut up, you stop talking about this, or we're going to hurt you. And I went on air and I said, I'm not going to do 1 TV show a week. I'm going to do 2 a week. And I'm not going to do 1 radio show a week. I'm going to go 7 days a week. And so, and then every time I get death threatened, I've gotten death threats before. I just say, well, you just do what you have to do. Aren't you a coward? Don't you feel sorry for yourself? What kind of future are you looking forward to? And I just hang the phone up. And I haven't had those threats in a long time because they know I'm far beyond, going back. I can't go back.
And that was an interesting time going down to Austin. Actually, it was interesting with Hurricane Katrina occurring at the same time because I went down there and also got some footage of the convention center in Austin where a lot of people were being housed after they were evacuated out of New Orleans. So we'll show you just a quick clip, really quick clip with one of the people that I was talking to down in Austin. Go ahead, caller.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, I was wondering if you had any information on the Bohemian Grove. I know that a lot of higher-up people go to it, and it's secluded from the rest of the public.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if you could elaborate on, what goes on there.
Well, I'm not the expert on Bohemian Grove. Alex Jones, the guy you just saw, was the guy that infiltrated. But there's been a lot of talk about Bohemian Grove prior to Alex Jones entering Bohemian Grove. But, yeah, it's a coalition of different, similar to the Bilderbergers and the Trilateral Commission, the CFR. But more particular, Here in the U.S., it's like the old boys club in the Redwoods in Northern California, where a lot of elitists get together and plan out policy. Now, they deny they plan out policy, but it's been admitted that a number of decisions were made in Bohemian Grove, including the decision for Vice President Dick Cheney to be the running mate of George W. Bush. But not only that, the strangest part of Bohemian Grove, which everyone knows by now that's looked into it, is that they partake in a mock ritual sacrifice to something that's been identified as Moloch. But by the way, that hasn't been proven for sure. There is no clear identity of the deity that they worship. Moloch is one speculation. Columbia is another speculation as well of what deity they may be giving their tribute to. So that's all I can give you on that.
Oh, okay. And I just wanted to say congratulations on your 100th show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
And yeah, Bohemian Grove is a very dark place. A lot of weird stuff has happened there. And again, so much of it is so far removed from Congress that we have a very difficult time holding our elitist owners accountable because we're slaves, and slaves really don't vote. But if you want to create the perception that we're free beings, let us vote. Just control the candidates and the voting system, and you have a total dictatorship. And I don't understand how Obama or Hillary or any of these clowns that Mike Gravel, during the last Democratic debate recently on TV, says, these people frighten me. Because nuclear weapons and the use of them, according to these people, those decisions to pull out a nuke in case of a situation with Iran, those options are not off the table. And that's the point he was trying to make. None of these people that are part of Bilderberg, people part of CFR, like Hillary, like Diane Sawyer on ABC, or the people that go to Bohemian Grove, want anything, none of them want anything that they talk about behind closed doors available to the public for a very, very good reason. Now with Katrina, and we need to move on here, I did want to say that in Austin, a lot of the clothes, a lot of the shoes in the cut that you see towards the end came from, again, people in Austin. A lot of the help came from volunteers that lived in Austin. It wasn't provided for the federal government. And again, that is the #1 lesson that the experiment, which is what really happened at Hurricane Katrina, the disarmament issue, the moving people out of their homes. They took a crisis and then they took advantage of the crisis. So the most important thing, and this again ties in with what I led into the show with today, is that you have to be sustainable and have access to your own food, water, and shelter, etc. That's completely separate from the grid, from big business, from the government. And with that, we'll be right back with another quick clip from my interview with John Stottmiller. Be right back.
The information that I want to portray is how the families actually were separated, because after the hurricane hit and the families were then moved from New Orleans to the Astrodome in Houston, the women and children were actually evacuated first, so the men were left behind, and then by the time the women got settled in the Astrodome, then they started moving them into Austin, and the men were transported into Houston. But they finally, after about 8 days, the families were all brought together in Austin at the Embassy Suites, as a matter of fact. And then from there, we've been dispersing those families into apartments. And thanks to a group of property management companies that own like 10 or 12 apartments, they've been helping settle all of these people here in Austin. Austin has just really had a tremendous turnout.
Actually, with the guy that you saw in the first part of that clip, the African-American with the Band-Aid on his face, I had a really great interview with him, but unfortunately my microphone was not entirely plugged into the camcorder. He was sharing how he found a young girl who was separated from her mother, and he took her, the little girl, under his wing during the evacuation from New Orleans to Austin, Texas. By the time they got to Austin, Texas, though, however, or it might have been Houston, he was able to reunite the child with the mother, and that was all by accident. And that is a very scary situation for a very young girl to be in, knowing what we know about what happened during that time. So it was a really warming story to hear that. We have another phone call. How are you, caller? Go ahead, you got the floor. We good?
Hello?
Yeah, hi.
Oh, sorry. I could hear you talking, but I couldn't. Hi. I would like to talk about global warming. Sorry, I'm choking on penis.
And that'll be the rest of the calls for the night. But, you know, I think that's his intention. Maybe I'll just keep calling and calling and calling, and Alex won't take phone calls. But if maybe one of you would call, it would change that. Huh. Our next clip comes from my interview with John Stottmiller at the Republic Broadcasting Network, located in Round Rock, Texas. We'll be right back.
We have quite a reach. I've been a talk show host now going on 13 years. And as I said earlier, this is my second network. And we go global. I've been watching in response to the globalization process around the world, and people are catching on to it. Even though that we were sold a bill of goods in this country, just as people were sold a bill of goods in France or Germany or whatever the case may be, the general population started to find out exactly what they were under. And what they discovered was that this is the grand plan. What 10 years ago I was being called a wingnut for, anti-government, whatever else, was just exposing their plan for global governance. And, you know, global governance scheme is what they're all about. We had NAFTA, our first installment here in this country back in '92. Just a couple of months ago, we had CAFTA signed, and that's the pre-step or the precursor to the Free Trade Area of Americas, which is going to unite Canada, Mexico, the United States, Central and South America, the Caribbean, and parts in between. And that is going to be the mirror to the European Union. And eventually, those two will be joined, and then you'll have your basis of your global governance. So it is real close. And we've been telling people about this for years. And it's been intricate, it's been long-range planned, and I would challenge anybody, and I'll shut this network down tomorrow. I will quit broadcasting tomorrow. If somebody can prove to me that I'm wrong about the global governance scheme, I'll walk away. I'll be more than happy to go down and drink little drinks on Maui Beach with little umbrellas in it or something, you know, pursue other endeavors. But we are in this fight, and we're in this fight for our own liberty and independence and sovereignty as a nation.
And that was John Stottmiller, the owner and broadcaster at the Republic Broadcasting Network. We're going to have the phone number of the guy that's been calling on the screen momentarily. This also goes outside of Oregon, so those that would like to contribute to the truth movement and engage in our fellow man in polite dialogue will have that available to them. In our next clip, I went on and also talked with Galen Ross. Galen Ross was an interesting character. Galen, I don't know, he's got to be in the 70s. By now. He might even be in his 80s. I'm not sure. But he wrote a book, Who's Who of the Elite. Again, tying together these secretive groups, this web of power that connects the Bilderberg Group, and in some cases the Masons, the Trilateral Commission, the CFR, the Club of Rome, and other groups that are part of this umbrella organization. We'll be right back and finish up the last clip at that. Stick around.
This one over here looks interested in you.
Graduated from Texas A&M University. I went into the service because I was in ROTC and went into the Army Security Agency, which is a part of the National Security Agency, the big brother to the CIA, and was assigned to as a company commander in a military intelligence unit on the DMZ in South Korea. The elite don't use the term New World Order anymore. They use the term globalization or global union or global community, global architecture, because when George Herbert Walker Bush was president, he used the term New World Order 2 or 3 times in some of the speeches. And the audience immediately attracted their attention. So the elite decided that was too much of a giveaway, so they have switched from the term New World Order to globalization or global union. In 1998, the Rockefeller family was worth $11.48 trillion, with a T, trillion dollars. The Rothschild family is worth somewhere between 100 and 700 trillion dollars. And they own every central bank in the world except the so-called rogue nations. And that's interesting in the fact that within 6 months after we invaded Afghanistan, the elite created their central bank in Afghanistan. Within 6 months after we invaded Iraq, the elite created their central bank in Iraq. Now there's 5 other nations that the elite don't own their central bank. And so the common thread of the nations that the State Department label as rogue nations is that they don't allow the elite to own their central bank. The elite did a study to see how many newspapers it would take for them to buy in order to control the news media. So they looked at something like 125 or 30 newspapers and determined that they only needed to acquire 25 newspapers in order to control the news. And they did that. And in my book, Who's Who, the Elite, if you look under newspapers, news magazines, and television sections, you'll see that all the key players of all those news media are members of the Council of Foreign Relations. Some of them are members of also the Trilateral Commission, and a few are members of all 3. So the elite, and also the Rothschilds bought Reuters back several years ago. And then recently, Reuters bought the Associated Press. So they control all the wire services. So you only see on television or read in the newspapers and news magazines what they want you to see or read.
Now we got Kenneth's number here, 503-629, and I'll stop right there. I thought about putting up the number and then I decided against it, but they just jumped the gun. But there it is, 503-6, they just jumped the gun, that's okay. 503-629-5022, Kenneth Madden. I was just deciding not to, but it already went up. But that's okay. Anyway, yeah, tell him thanks. Do we have a phone call?
Yes, you do.
Let him through. Hey, how you doing?
Hello?
How you doing?
Not sure if I'm on air.
Well, you are.
Oh, okay, it's you. The TV isn't syncing with the
Never have the
phone, so-
TV volume up ever when you call a show, either on radio or TV.
No, it's down, but it's not syncing with the phone. Anyway, I'm really impressed. This is my first time. I just happened across your program, and I'm really grateful to see it. Thanks, Alex.
You're welcome.
Wow. So much to say, and I know you've covered a lot of subjects, but you were talking about survivalists and needing answers. So I think and I called in because there was obviously a problem with someone else calling in, and I wanted to have a say, but we never do, and I want to encourage anyone else that's listening to the program to do so. So people like who was just calling in 100 times.
Unfortunately, because they didn't call in when they had the opportunity, no one else can get on tonight. I mean, and it's like when I open up the phone lines, that's the time to call, and I don't have time to take phone calls. There's a very narrow amount of window that I have because I have to cover the news. When I open up the lines, that's the time to call. But you're,
Okay, well, I'm sorry that I actually took my time, but community. I just want to say community. Exactly that. Call in, be a voice, be a part, be a community. Go to your school systems, go to your farmers markets, just everything that we can do to support the natural community, the people that are really doing grassroots stuff. I'm really grateful to see your program. I found your MySpace. I'm putting my request in.
And I want to talk a little bit about more on that after this last clip, because it is very important now that a lot of us are on the same page with what we're up against. to unify to a degree to where we can analyze what resources we have in our own local backyard and how we can survive what we know is coming.
Exactly, because I don't even know where they are, and we need to know. I mean, we need a network.
The city's taken.
The
city's taken. I'm sorry to cut you off, but yeah, the city and state has taken control of a lot of things. They're trying to put fluoride in the water supply. I mean, it's huge. In the Oregon, they don't even want us to talk. They don't even talk about that on the mainstream news, but it's still happening. So, you're right. And there's a lot I don't know. That's why I'm getting all amped up about it for the summertime, because it's go time. It's time for me to kick it up a notch and give you some real information and get you active.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.
Because the New World Order and talking about 9/11, my friends, just does not cut it. And I don't care if 80% question 9/11. What are they doing about it? It's the fear, the apathy, and I'll continue on that after this clip, which is a little bit of the behind the scenes that happens here outside the box, trying to go live each week for 1 hour to bring you news and information you won't hear on CNN or Fox. We'll be right back.
Right, but what I'm talking about is like a two-man operation.
Oh, that, yeah, okay. Well, this will be the night for that.
Yeah.
50. So these ones are just no article for it, so I'm going to go through them quickly. I want to literally like move through my articles quickly. In fact, I'm going to go highlight the most important parts and skip over some of this copy. This is impossible for me to do, so I'm going to cut it down. Now they want one for Europe, and they want Russia and the United States to be on the same page. Russia doesn't want to do it because they don't have any commands over the security. That's what they want there. That's 51. And the next one is India's defense ministry said that they have successfully tested a nuclear-capable ballistic missile. That's what the next one is.
Okay.
So that's 53. Yep. That's not world news. Oh, because they're an ally. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Makes sense now. I get it.
Those bastards.
Does it seem like that shot changed?
Reporting on your world in metamorphosis.
Oh,
I'm Alex Ansary, and this is the 96th edition of Outside the Box. Yourself, what it means to be a free human being on Earth today. With that, I'll see you next
roll
week. Good night.
You. Thanks.
Nah.
Okay, you can bring it up.
I'm Alex Jones, and you're watching Outside the Box, going where the rest of the media fears to tread since 2004. Infowars.com.
Later, man. I want to thank my crew. I want to thank everybody back there that's been helping me do what we do for free. It costs us passion, it costs us energy, but we know it means something. We know we're engaged in something as trivial and superficial as it may appear to some of you out there right now. It means a lot. Sharing, community, the ultimate commodities in the 21st century, in love, in food, the things that we as a species have taken for granted for so long. It's coming around to give us a gigantic slap in the face called reality. But reality does not come in the form of reading it in the form of one of these articles, all of which, by the way, are available on alexansary.com. None of which we can get through tonight, but doesn't really change week after week. Doesn't really change. More police, more surveillance, more cameras, more chips, more RFID, now nano powder. It just continues and continues and continues. Infinium, because we're not starving. We still have our houses. And the thing about it is, I want to see us flourish. It's what humanity does. We grow, we build, we create things. It's in our nature. Most of what we're doing today goes directly contrary to what we should be doing naturally, what we should be eating, the way we should be talking. Now, none of this is written in stone. Humans should be this way, humans should be that way. That's what religion's for, not to be offensive to any of you, but that's not what the show is. It's, of course, merging yourself with who you really are and understanding its connection to source. Now, everything down here in this third-dimensional reality which to some level can be compared to a mental hospital, a very large mental hospital that some would say under quarantine. How did it get to be this way? Where did we come from? At one point in our life, what point was it that we began to get so programmed and indoctrinated that none of those questions were asked by us anymore, and our only concern in our world was to work, was to drive, as the man mentioned earlier in the program, to make money so that we can pay the bills, so that we can stay alive. So that we can stay alive? For what? And what the heck are we trying to do to hold this system up now at this point that's doing nothing except enslaving us? Let me tell you something. The whole thing about the boot, again, like I said, stomping on the human face forever, how can that be possible if we're unsustainable? There are stories in the ancient texts about ancient civilizations that have lived before us that were more sophisticated on some level. And there's always this theme about their technology surpassing their spirituality, and then a crash that follows. A crash that follows to wake them up for whatever reason. Maybe it's a cycle, maybe it's a universal cycle, maybe it's the solar cycle. Who's to tell, man? You got a scientist for everything telling you what's going on. But you know as well as I do, there is nothing boring, there is nothing bland about the times that you live in today. These are exciting, but these are also very frightening times as well. And constantly, in the duration of the next couple of years, your fears are going to be tested. What do you really believe in? I mean, really, where are your values? What are you willing to do to get food in a good way or for a negative way? Are you willing to go do the work premeditatively now? Or are you going to wait later on and possibly be in a situation where you have to take it from someone else? Now, some people differ very distinctly when they talk with me about how they feel about the system and how they view the way out. You have the violent revolution over here, and you have the pacifist revolution over here. You have illusions at the base in sometimes both of these groups, but I lean towards the nonviolent approach because doing the same thing that we've been doing for thousands of years is going to continue to lead us in the same spot. And once you have a new world order that becomes so unsustainable, even with all their technology and machinery and oil, that they begin to collapse and we enter a stone age. Then we have the world of tribes, gang warfare, regular rape, murder, suicide, breakdowns. As dark as all of those things are, the gears of war, as Megadeth calls it, are the things that are going to test us to our very core, testing us, probing us. Is this something bad? Is this something good? Is this the hot stove that we stick our hand on, which burns us in every nerve, within every fiber of our being? That we are at death point, and there is no looking back. We today, in the year 2007 and beyond, are going to the point of no return. So it is imperative, my friends, that you remember the path to the ultimate truth still resides within yourself, your own heart. And with that, I'll see you next week, my friends. Good night.
Years of war, 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 years of war. Ethnic cleansing with no defending these acts of genocide. A fatal ending with no surrendering to cover what the crimes and lies. Smart bombs, precision guided armament, a more sophisticated way to end up dead. Still we search and invent such intelligent weapons that kill each other like the gears of war.